Has the thought ever crossed your mind to disappear without telling anyone? To go somewhere alone for some time? Maybe to go for a short walk? Or to try something adventurous, about which no one knows anything except you? If you need anything on the way, no one is going to come to help you, especially if you are going to a location where you are the only one. This thought sounds very strange. How strange would this feeling be, that you are in danger, but no one is going to come to help? You are completely lonely, helpless, and you can only wait for death, because no one is coming to help you. Like Aaron Ralston was in a similar situation. He could see his death with his own eyes. Because of this, he picked up the camera and started recording his last message directly.
My name's Aaron Ralston. My parents are down on Larry Ralston of Englewood, Colorado.
He knew that this footage was his death, will be available to people only after. Because of this, he gave his introduction and said that whoever finds this footage should deliver his message to his family.
Whoever finds this, please make an attempt to get it to them.
We can see in his eyes that this is his end.
Be sure of it. I would appreciate it.
But how can a person get stuck in such a situation, where he has lost so much that instead of helping himself, he directly gives up and sits down and starts waiting for his death? So we will know all this in today's video. Aaron Ralston was a very adventurous person from the beginning. So in 2003, without much planning, I thought about taking a solo adventure tour. The plan was simple. They had to explore the canyons of Utah. So they took some water, snacks, and his climbing gear, picked up and left on this adventure. Early in the morning, went on this adventure. He reached Blue John Canyon and started his solo hike. Deep in the canyon. While hiking over the pit, his foot fell on a large boulder, and they didn't know that this boulder was loose. So as soon as he put his foot on this boulder, with this boulder, he fell very quickly inside the canyon. And he didn't get a chance to recover at all. By the time he could understand something, by then he had fallen inside the canyon. But the problem was not that he fell and they got hurt. Even bigger than that. The problem was that his hand was 700 pounds, was pinned under a large boulder. Meaning he was stuck in one place, and there was no one around for miles. Aaron had no way to ask someone else for help. Shouting was completely pointless, because there was no one to hear the voice for miles. Was not there. What's done is done. Now the thing to think about is how to get out of here. Aaron put all his strength into overturning that boulder. But that boulder was not even moving. Aaron soon realized that blindly applying force was not going to do anything. On the contrary, energy will be wasted differently. So now he started using his brain a little. He had climbing gear and a rope, using which he tried to create leverage and then applied force again. But that stone still didn't move. By the way, he also had a camera, with which he was clicking photos and videos in between. So this method of removing that boulder also turned out to be a flop. His hand remained stuck under that boulder. But there must be some way to remove this boulder. So he checked his bag again. He had 350 milliliters of water, a little bit of food, and a small multi-tool. So can some way be found by using these tools? So while thinking this, the night falls, and he had to spend this night standing up, due to which he couldn't sleep properly. But his whole night was spent thinking about this, that maybe he would be stuck here forever, and he would die here. The next day also, he tried to move the boulder again, tried applying force from different angles, but nothing happened. Now the trapped hand had also started swelling. Even when he felt thirsty, he didn't drink much water because there was very little water anyway, and the same condition was with the food. And like this, the second day also passes without any progression. Now on the third day, he was very tired. He woke up dehydrated and he thought that, I don't need to move the boulder. I need to free myself from here. The first way to do this is to somehow break that boulder into two pieces so that the hand becomes free, which was not possible to do with one hand stuck. The second way was to chip away at that boulder with your multi-tool blade, and the third way was to amputate your own hand, which doesn't make any sense to do, because there would be so much bleeding that instead of saving your life, there is a greater risk of losing your life. And how can we forget that? Even after freeing his hand, Aaron has to walk and climb out of this canyon himself. So, the method of amputating the hand, it's utter nonsense. The boulder adhesive, the method is much better and perhaps the only way to get out of here. So Aaron's multi-tool had a blade, using which Aaron started sticking that rock. But that boulder was very strong. It wasn't sticking at all. But Aaron still didn't stop, and he kept sticking that boulder slowly. But because that blade was very dull, and it was a cheap blade, it wasn't having any effect on that rock. So what perhaps seemed like the only way for us to get out of here, now that method also doesn't seem possible. So neither is this boulder moving, nor are we able to check this boulder. The drinking water was also almost running out, and no help was coming from outside. And they were recording all of this on their camera, and now they were really starting to feel that amputate the hand was the only way to get out of here. Okay, so he took out his cheap blade and put it on his hand so that he could get a feel of that blade. He really started to think that he would have to mutate his hand. But again, the problem is that this blade is very dull, with which he might cut the skin on top, but he will never be able to cut the bone inside. And another problem is that if they started cutting their hand, and in the middle of there, he changed his mind and didn't go any further. If he can't, there's no chance of him surviving. That's why he dropped this plan. And with that, the day also comes to an end. And even today, there has been no progression. Now, on the fourth day, the water is completely finished. So Aaron started drinking his urine. By the fourth day, he had become very weak. And Aaron understood that this was his end, and another fear started to haunt him, that it shouldn't rain. Because in very little rain, water starts to collect inside the canyon. And if that happens, there is no chance of Aaron surviving, because he won't be able to do anything in this situation. By the fifth day, Aaron had given up hope. So, he put his name on the canyon wall, date of birth, and according to him, the day his death was going to happen in the future, that date carved it on the canyon wall. He took his camera and for his family, started recording a final goodbye message to
My name's Aaron Ralston. My parents are Donna and Larry Ralston of Englewood, Colorado.
Now he didn't see any chance of survival. It was a very different type of feeling that Aaron was feeling at that time, and by this time he was also starting to hallucinate. He was very weak inside, and he had nothing to eat and drink either. And now he was really starting to consider amputating his arm. He tried very hard to sleep tonight, but he was not getting any sleep at all. Now, by the sixth day, he had become completely weak, and he thought that being stuck here, it is better than dying. That his hand should be amputated, and then see what we can. But think for a moment, how wrong a decision this could be. Because he has to cut his hand himself. And once he started cutting, then he cannot stop in the middle. Because if he stops halfway, then he will never be able to cut his hand. And he will die here from bleeding. And even if it's assumed that he has amputated his hand, even then, he will have to go back out of the canyon by himself. And even after that, they will have to keep traveling on their own until they find a human. But Aaron, not caring about any of this, suddenly decided to amputate his hand. But the small blade he had was very dull and weak, with which he could probably cut the skin. But as soon as it came to bone and muscles, the blade could easily fail. So for this reason, Aaron thought of snapping his bone first. Aaron positioned his body near that boulder in such a way that he could use his hand as leverage, and with that force, he broke his bones. After the bone broke, he started cutting his skin and muscles with his blade. This was a very painful process. Due to YouTube's guidelines, I can't explain in detail, but the pain, you can guess from this, that it took about 1 hour to amputate the entire hand. It was a very slow and painful process. Now, his hand was free, but another big problem stood before him. Now he had to get out of the canyon with only one hand. Moreover, he has been stuck here for 5 days, because of which he has become very weak. And if he cannot get out of here, then it is impossible for him to survive. So, that 10 kilometers, they kept walking continuously. First they crossed the canyon. Then, they kept walking in the desert. But they didn't find anyone, because it was a very isolated area. There was no one there for miles around. Just when Aaron was giving up all hope, suddenly he saw a family who had come there for hiking. As soon as the family saw Aaron, they quickly offered help. They gave Aaron water and food, and quickly informed the authorities. After a while, a helicopter came, and Aaron's treatment began. So his life was saved because he got medical treatment at the right time. If Aaron had amputated his hand a little sooner or later, then maybe he would never have met that family, and he would not have received medical treatment at the right time. So there was a huge luck factor in Aaron's life being saved. But it would be wrong to call it all luck, because if Aaron had never even tried, his wife would never have been saved. So that's it for today's video. I'll see you in the next awesome video.